Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, especially in the world of Impact Wrestling. So let's talk about Impact. Let's talk about Mickie James. You can see her on the screen right there. You would have seen her on the thumbnail for this video. And Mickie James, a former Knockouts champion, has teased some possible matches against some of the current Impact Wrestling Knockouts currently on the Impact Wrestling roster. So that's big news. Now, Mickie James, obviously, has been in the news quite a lot recently for both the NWA and for Impact Wrestling. Now, obviously, she's in the news with the NWA because it was announced by Billy Corgan, the president, owner of the National Wrestling Alliance, that Mickie James will be the executive producer for the NWA Empower pay-per-view, which is an all-female pay-per-view. And also, Mickie James then announced that she will be competing the following night at the NWA 73rd anniversary show as well. So, big news for Mickie James. Now, Mickie James obviously spoke openly when it comes to the all-women's pay-per-view that she's willing and she wants to have conversations with everybody, irrespective of contractual status, whether they're in Impact, whether they're in WWE, whether they're in AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, I don't know if there's any actually females in there, but Ring of Honor, Stardom, you name it, she's open to them all. And I'm sure she'd be very happy to have all of those talents on that NWA Empower show. It's certainly going to have a lot of traction and a lot of people talking about it on social media. But how does this translate to Impact Wrestling? Well, obviously, hosting an all-female pay-per-view, that does translate to Impact because Impact Wrestling has one of the best female divisions in the world. Arguably the best female division in the world. In the Knockouts division, it's a staple of their show. It's a cornerstone of their product and their promotion, and it has been for a real long time. Over a decade has passed since the formation of the Knockouts division in Impact Wrestling. And again, it's always been a cornerstone, a staple of the product. It's got Knockouts Tag Team Championships at the moment. It really is a driving force of female wrestling in North America, but I guess in just global pro wrestling as well. Certainly is critically acclaimed and widely considered to be one of the best women's divisions in the world. So obviously, Mickie James is going to be looking at talent from Impact Wrestling to work the NWA Empower show. Will that happen? I don't know, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's a tough one to sell. Impact and the NWA have worked together since Billy Corgan has owned the NWA. There was an empty arena match that took place inside the Impact Zone. Again, I believe it was Tim Storm versus Josephus, I think. But that did take place inside of the Impact Zone. So Billy Corgan isn't completely opposed to working with Impact Wrestling, but there is still a significant amount of heat there. Billy Corgan himself, in a recent interview, said so, that there's still heat there between him and Impact Wrestling, not only because of the stuff that happened between he and Dixie Carter during that whole, him being the president of Impact and all that craziness and the Game of Thrones stuff, but also he recently accused Impact Wrestling of stealing one of the NWA's talents. Now, we spoke about who that could be on the video. Again, if you've got any clues or you think any guesses as to who you think that is, let me know in the comment section below. But Mickie James has said that she's open to having any stars of any company come across, and maybe this is the event that builds the bridge between the NWA and Impact Wrestling. Who knows? Maybe Mickie James is going to be that bridge between the both companies. I don't know. We'll wait and see about that. But when it comes to Impact Wrestling, of course, Mickie James has been teased possibly for an Impact Wrestling return over the course of the last 7 days. Now, last week on Impact Wrestling, we saw a backstage segment with Fire and Flavor, the Knockouts Tag Team Champions. They were attacked by Rosemary and Havoc, and a situation led to Kira Hogan being thrown into a garbage can, a trash can, filled with loads of trash bags. And as she's getting helped out of this garbage can by her tag team partner, Tasha Steelz, she picks up a trash bag. And what does it say on it? It says Mickie, which obviously is a reference to WWE's trash bag gate that involved Mickie James. Now, if you're not familiar about this, again, we did a video on it last week. Be sure to check it out. But the cliff notes essentially are that when Mickie James was released by WWE back in April, along with several other WWE superstars due to budget cuts associated with the pandemic, she was sent her belongings in a trash bag that had pretty much just a note on it that said Mickie, and inside was all of her belongings. This isn't the first time this has happened either. Mickie James said when she was released by the company in 2010, the same thing happened to her. Then plenty of other people, after Mickie James posted this on social media, an image of the trash bag with her name on it, plenty of other people came forward and went, yeah, that happened to me, that happened to me, that happened to me. This led to Triple H and Stephanie McMahon issuing a public apology to Mickie James and anyone else that had experienced this issue over the years with WWE. It led to the firing of Mark Carrano from talent relations. And again, it opened up the discussion about how WWE treats their talent, specifically the talent that they have fired from their contract. Not only do they feel like trash in that WWE has said, you're not valuable to us anymore, or you're not worth the money of your contract anymore, we're firing you, and you're not going to get paid by us after the 90-day non-compete clause. After doing all of that, they then literally treat them like trash. They send their belongings in trash bags. Not only do you feel like trash, you are regarded as trash by WWE. It was an awful, awful PR story for WWE, and frankly, it's an awful way to treat talent. So, as I mentioned, this past week on Impact Wrestling, it was referenced by Kira Hogan. It was referenced by Impact Wrestling when they pulled up the trash bag that said Mickie inside the garbage can that Kira Hogan had been thrown into by Havoc and Rosemary. Now, on the video we did last week, we spoke about what this could mean. And realistically, again, thinking about it a little bit more, having a bit more time to think about it, I think it's two scenarios, basically. One scenario, and I think this is the more likely scenario, is basically Impact Wrestling trying to do a bit of social commentary. They're trying to feel the pulse of pro wrestling fans. They're trying to make light of an incident. They're trying to do a bit of a tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit like an SNL sketch, right? When you're trying to be topical, you're trying to get a bit of attention on social media as well, which it did. That segment did get attention on social media. Some people got way too offended over nothing, frankly. It wasn't Impact Wrestling referring to Mickie James as trash. And if you're going to be upset with anyone, be upset with WWE. They're the ones that actually did that. But that's by the by. I think it was Impact Wrestling trying to be, again, topical, do a bit of social commentary, trying to poke fun at the situation, whilst also doing a bit of a red herring. I think they were trying to get people like me and like you that are watching this video, and people that are on social media. They were trying to get people talking. They were trying to make people think, wait, is Mickie James going to show up in Impact Wrestling? Is she going to show up at Slammiversary? She is a former Knockouts champion. Is she going to show up? Is she going to show up? That's what they were trying to do. They did this last year with the stars that were released by WWE in April of last year, heading up to Slammiversary, and in the same vein that they had this year when they were doing the video packages and all that kind of stuff, saying who's going to show up, our world is going to change, all that kind of stuff. On Impact, they did a ton of red herrings. They had the Super Eric cape and the Super Eric costume be found a couple of times, indicating that Super Eric, not Eric Young, Super Eric was going to return. They also had, at the end of one episode, D'Lo Brown stand up, and he had the Aces and Eights, what do they call it? The cut. The Aces and Eights cut, that vest, that leather vest. So it had people saying, is Aces and Eights going to come back? We did about 1 million videos on it last year. I looked at it as Impact Wrestling trying to get people talking, doing a bit of social commentary, and maybe trying to do a red herring that Mickie James is going to return to Impact. Because myself, personally, looking at Mickie James' schedule coming up, I think she's very busy. She's got her hands full, right? She does. She's going to be the executive producer of this all-female NWA pay-per-view. In addition to that, she's going to be wrestling the following night at the NWA 73rd anniversary show. She's going to be very, very busy, in my point being. But in addition to her being teased on Impact Wrestling last week, she herself has teased some possible matches against the names you can see on the screen right now, against the likes of Kira Hogan and Deonna Purrazzo in a series of tweets on Twitter, plus a former WWE star that is rumored to be headed to Impact Wrestling in the future. Now, one of those names, as you can see, is Deonna Purrazzo. Now, the Deonna Purrazzo hint, shall we say, came from a video whereby it was posted, I think, a couple of days ago. I spoke about it yesterday because Alundra Blaze, Medusa, WWE Hall of Fame, whatever you want to call her, heaped a load of praise on Deonna Purrazzo after this video that Impact Wrestling posted, where basically it was talking about the Knockouts division. It was talking about the competitors in the Knockouts division, how it's the leader of female wrestling in the world, all that kind of stuff. Like, here's a quote that Deonna Purrazzo says. It says, "We make up a collection of women who have redefined women's wrestling," and it's Deonna Purrazzo talking about the Knockouts division. Basically, Mickie James quote tweets this and does a series of emojis, one being a light bulb, one being a star, one being a torch. So you could read into that several ways, and yes, this is what we've got to on this channel, is trying to decipher emojis, just like reading hieroglyphics for me. We might as well be in ancient Egypt at this point, but I've just translated that myself. I look at that as her saying, I've got an idea, you're a star, passing the torch, right? Maybe that makes sense. That makes sense. Am I reaching? I don't think I'm reaching there. Obviously, she wants to have a match with Deonna Purrazzo. A lot of people want to have a match with Deonna Purrazzo because Deonna Purrazzo is one of, if not the best female wrestler on the planet today. She is right up there. She is right up there with your Sasha Bankses, with your Becky Lynches, with your Charlotte Flairs, with your Baileys, whether you're with your Britt Bakers, whether you're whoever's. Thunder Rosa. Deonna Purrazzo is right up there. She is right in that conversation right now. And maybe Mickie James, she looks at this and goes, look, if we can get Deonna Purrazzo on that NWA pay-per-view, the all-female pay-per-view, that's a massive win. And maybe Mickie James herself will say, well, I'll wrestle Deonna Purrazzo in Impact and we can do a rematch at the all-women's pay-per-view. That's an angle. That's a big angle. Maybe that's what she's looking at there. I don't know. As far as Mickie James wrestling on the female pay-per-view, though, it must be said she said she wasn't going to because she would be busy. But look, who knows? Who knows? That could happen. So she's teased a match possibly with Deonna Purrazzo. Again, that could be in an NWA ring. That could be in an Impact Wrestling ring. She is a former Knockouts champion after all. Now, another name she has teased is Kiera Hogan herself. Now, I mentioned this actually comes in the last 24 hours or so. And, of course, Kiera Hogan was the name that pulled the trash bag out of the garbage last week, and it had Mickie James' name on it. So all of those people that were so offended and upset that Impact Wrestling would disparage Mickie James' name. Oh, Mickie James, she's a legend. She's a legend. How dare Impact Wrestling do this to her? How dare they mock her? How dare they mock what WWE did to her? Again, if you're going to be angry at anyone, I wouldn't be angry at Impact because they didn't actually do it. Mickie James certainly doesn't seem to have an issue with Impact or Kiera Hogan for that matter, because Kiera Hogan tweeted last night, quote, me versus Mickie James, and the thinker emoji saying hashtag dream match, hashtag book it. Mickie James responded to this saying, quote, I would be honored. You know I love you. So Mickie James doesn't have a problem with Kiera Hogan. There you go. That answers that question. Mickie James doesn't have a problem with Impact Wrestling. In fact, Mickie James wants to work with Kiera Hogan. And it's funny, isn't it? Because after Mickie James is released by WWE, if anything, it's probably been the best thing for her because she's finally being recognized as the legend she is. There aren't a ton of people with the CV, with the credibility that Mickie James does. She is a hero and a role model and an idol for a lot of these current crops of female wrestlers around the world. They all actively want to work against Mickie James. Kiera Hogan versus Mickie James, that would be great. They've teased it on Impact. Maybe, considering that Mickie James said she's interested, maybe something can happen in Impact Wrestling going forward, right? Certainly is a possibility as well. Now, I mentioned it wasn't just current Impact names. Maybe it's a future Impact name as well. Because Chelsea Green, who is reported to be in discussions with Impact Wrestling, about to return to the company, of course, she was also released by WWE back in April, and since then she's been heavily linked with Impact. Of course, Matt Cardona, her partner, is there as well, her fiance. She obviously is a former Knockouts champion in herself as Laurel Van Ness. She's got strong ties with Scott D'Amore. For me, it's one of the most it's one of the names of the people that were released back in April that I think is the most certain name to return to Impact. I think is Chelsea Green. I think, again, we've seen not only just, again, this isn't just intuition on my part. This is reports. There are active reports saying that she's in discussions with Impact Wrestling for a return. Well, Chelsea Green tweeted yesterday, quote, rumor has it Mickie James has never met someone crazier than her. Well, Mick, I know a girl. Hashtag NWA73, hashtag NPower, hashtag Hot Mess, and then CC'd the NWA president Billy Corgan in that as well. So that would indicate that maybe Chelsea Green is looking at that happening in an NWA ring. But, of course, if Chelsea Green is signed to Impact Wrestling, maybe it will have to happen in an Impact Wrestling ring. Who knows? I would think any deal that Chelsea Green does sign with Impact Wrestling, because she's in the position of power here, right? She's coming off of WWE television. A lot of Impact Wrestling fans want her to return. Impact Wrestling, again, very much invests in their Knockouts division. They want her to return. I would assume, and I might be wrong here, but I would assume that Chelsea Green would probably say, look, I'm happy to return to Impact, but I want to be able to work the NWA Empower show. I want to be able to work maybe the NWA 73rd anniversary show against Mickie James. I want to be able to work indie shows and all that. And Impact Wrestling have proven themselves again to be very, very flexible. I mention this very often when it comes to contracts. The days of Impact Wrestling signing talents exclusively and all that kind of stuff doesn't happen. Pretty much the majority of Impact Wrestling contracts aren't exclusive. You can work select indie dates as long as you clear it with Impact Wrestling. Obviously, when it comes to the likes of the Good Brothers, there's also an option to work with New Japan. They've got working relationships with New Japan. So, I think Chelsea Green will head to Impact, but I think she'll have a contract whereby she can work for other promotions, can work select indie dates, that kind of thing. Now, I mentioned when it comes to Mickie James as well, since we're talking about her, that Mickie James has officially announced her return to the ring. Now, after being released by the WWE on April 15, 2021, Mickie James showed up in the National Wrestling Alliance, which was to be expected considering her husband is the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis, while her main focus is the all-female Empower show, which she is producing producing. That same weekend, of course, will host the NWA 73rd anniversary event, and James has confirmed she will be wrestling on that show and is looking for an opponent. She said, quote, "On August 29 is NWA 73. The anniversary show, and so on the anniversary show I'm announcing that I'm going to wrestle at NWA 73. I'm looking for an opponent, and so I want you to tell Billy who you want to see me wrestle. Who wants to wrestle me at NWA 73? That's the big question. Now, as far as who is it going to be, I have no idea. There's plenty of names, and there certainly is a lot of names pitching this, whether it is... I think arguably the biggest one would be Deonna Purrazzo. I think from an Impact point of view, obviously the NWA does have a working relationship with AEW, so there is a potential for a Britt Baker. I mean, I think Thunder Rosa versus Mickie James would be awesome. And Thunder Rosa, of course, is under contract with the NWA. So there's certainly options. And it's interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, Impact Wrestling, speaking of Slammiversary and the such, have announced the return of Wrestle Week to Access TV. Impact Wrestling and Access TV have announced that Wrestle Week will return in July as the lead up to the Slammiversary pay-per-view. The Wrestle Week block of programming will begin on Monday, July 12th, with the Good Brothers hosting a screening of Pulp Fiction. Yeah, yes. Because I guess just Wrestle Week and just get them involved, right? Badass Movies with the Good Brothers Pulp Fiction will begin at 9 p.m. Eastern Time that night. Wrestle Week continues that Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with the Slammiversary Go Home edition of Impact. Then at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, it will be the premiere of Impact Wrestling This Is Slammiversary, which will serve as a preview for the pay-per-view, featuring sit-down interviews with Impact World Champion Kenny Omega and his challenger in the main event of Slammiversary for that Impact World title, Sami Callihan, and much more. Saturday, July 17, at 3 p.m. Eastern Time will feature the broadcast premiere of the Rebellion pay-per-view from April, which featured, of course, Kenny Omega winning the Impact World Championship from Rich Swann. Wrestle Week will then continue that night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with an encore presentation of the This Is Slammiversary preview special. Impact Slammiversary will then air that night, Saturday, July 17 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time from Skyway Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Besides Callahan versus Omega, other matches made official as of recording right now are Moose versus Chris Sabin, plus the Ultimate X match with X Division champion Josh Alexander, Ace Austin, Trey Miguel, Chris Bay, Rohit Raju, and PT Williams. So an exciting block of programming. Again, I don't have Access TV over here in the UK, obviously. I think a lot of people in the United States don't have Access TV, unfortunately. But the thing is, isn't it? Well, this is the problem. If you could access TV, if they genuinely had good exposure with Access TV, they would be laughing. They would be in such a great position because, of course, Anthem owns Access TV. If it was widely accessible, you'd be like, Impact Wrestling, they are a really strong, viable promotion because they're never losing that TV deal. Never. Because the company that owns them owns the network, right? That would be perfect. It's like, I guess it's akin to Turner owning WCW back in the day because they had the company. WCW was owned by Turner, but it was also on a network owned by Turner. That's why it was so viable. But then eventually Turner decides they want us out. So unless Anthem one day decides they want us out Impact Wrestling, they've always got a home on Access TV. I just think a lot of fans would prefer that they were on a network that more people could see and more people could find because Impact Wrestling, the product is great and they do have finances. Just don't have the exposure, which is incredibly frustrating, I know, to a lot of fans. I see all of your comments when a lot of people say, whenever I like to put polls up before most events every day, whether it's, are you watching Raw tonight, are you watching NXT tonight, are you watching Dynamite tonight, are you watching Impact, SmackDown, etc. And a lot of the time when I put up Impact Wrestling, one of the biggest comments I always get is, I don't have the network, I don't have the channel. I wish I would, but I don't have the access to the channel, which I guess is just beyond frustrating. Now, I know there are other ways to watch it, Twitch and the such, but it still is very frustrating for Impact fans because they watch it on demand the next day or they watch it online and they say, oh, I would love to watch this live, but I can't. And it's beyond frustrating. I feel your pain. Finally, I do want to mention this. We spoke about Don West. And the awful news about the former Impact announcer Don West, that he was diagnosed last week with, or announced last week that he had been diagnosed with brain lymphoma. And a GoFundMe has been set up to help the former TNA commentator Don West as he battles brain lymphoma. West's diagnosis was revealed last week when he posted a letter to the News Radio 560 KPQ website. The station hosts the Don West show, which the 58-year-old is hoping to return to. he said in that letter, quote, "I'm praying the chemotherapy will help me heal faster, and hopefully I'll be back on the radio soon." Now, as of writing, 80 people have donated a total of $6,364 to the fund. Many of the donations to the fund have been made anonymously. A few notable names have made sizable donations with their name attached. However, this includes the likes of Max Caster from AEW and Matt Cardona from Impact Wrestling. Ad-free shows, which of course features the likes of Jeff Jarrett now in a regular podcast, has been openly promoting this GoFundMe. So, for instance, the Arn Show Twitter account tweeted, quote, "Don West is a good man who is beloved in the wrestling industry. Join us in supporting him in his fight against lymphoma by visiting stillnotdone.com." Of course, this will redirect you to the GoFundMe page. This is what the GoFundMe reads, quote, "Don is a devoted husband to his beautiful wife, Terry. He has been blessed to work with and meet so many people through his work with the Shop at Home Network, TNA Wrestling, and the Wenatchee Wild hockey team, and most recently with Cherry Creek Media and News Radio 560 KPQ radio station and the Don West Show. Don and Terry would like to thank you for the outpouring of love and prayers since the announcement, and for coming alongside them on this health journey. And he is anxious to return to his show." So I'm going to be posting the link to all of this in the description box below. So if you want to, if you can, to support Don West to help the costs associated with his medical bills, because unfortunately, you know, in the United States, if you're sick, it costs to be sick, unfortunately, and it's horrible. I mean, I'm so thankful, so thankful over here in the United Kingdom for the NHS, for our National Health Service. It's beyond a lifesaver, and the fact that, you know, the prices aren't extortionate, it's incredible. But again, as I spoke about last week, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible news about Don West. You know, Don West, I think he is underrated. I think he's so underrated as a commentator. Yes, when he first started out, he might not have known a ton about pro wrestling. He was a pitch guy. He was on the QVC, Home Shopping Network, whatever you want to call it. He was a pitch guy. He sold things. But he translated that so well into the world of pro wrestling. And the broadcast team of Mike Tenay and Don West is so underrated. And I was a huge fan, and I am still a fan of Impact Wrestling, but I was a huge fan of TNA in the mid-2000s. And, Don West's voice, along with Mike Tenay, they were the soundtrack to that. They provided the lyrics to that music. And it's a horrible, horrible thing to see this announced. So the GoFundMe has been set up again. The link is in the description box below. So be sure to donate if you can and help Don West and his family out. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Get the rankings and get to people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.